All right. Hi, Saul. Thanks for coming online on a sunny,
Hi,
rainy day.
hi, Chris. No worries. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me here as well.
All right. I saw that you have prepared some slides. Maybe you just go ahead, take it
Yeah,
here.
I thought I would put together a bunch of points that I want to share. Some of these are actually challenges, and some of these are actually, in retrospect, the things that I and the team could have done. So if anyone who is going through a similar experience would be able to, um, if I can actually contribute and if they find it useful, then it'd be great. I'll be happy. So the first thing it's to me is stakeholders and expectations, right? So I think as you would agree, this is one of the most complex and the most challenging part of handling any projects. Part of the reason is sometimes, we don't really spend enough time identifying who the stakeholders are, right? And we also don't spend enough time understanding their expectations. So what happens is that in my experience, in the early part of the projects, what could happen is that if we don't check in with them regularly, if we don't actually address their concerns, what tends to happen is that they actually um, tend to ask more questions and people become doubtful in the project delivery. So what's actually good in my experience, it's also a bit of a lessons learned is at the beginning of the project, even before the project starts, it's good to check in with them. Hey, how do you want this to be done up, right? What is your timeline expectations? What is your scope expectations? How do you think we should run this project? Right? So I think it's this regular pieces of actions which actually go a long way. Yeah. And some of the points that I want to highlight also is that we don't go to them and talk about only risks and
So
issues.
before we continue, I give a bit of context, all right? So
Yeah,
for the folks that they are watching, so just recently is almost finishing a project that is around 400 people kind of project. I think it's around 20 to 30 million dollar investment, if I'm not mistaken, on the retail banking. So I have asked So to come online on this Sunday to share his lessons learned on this quite big projects that is happening in Vietnam. I think maybe one of the even biggest digital projects of Vietnam. Sorry, so I forgot to give a context. Carry
yeah,
on.
no, yeah. So yeah, so not only you identify who they are and what they want, but also it's good to regularly share what you have achieved, even the small milestones, small achievements. It's good to share with them. Hey, we have put together this, we have accomplished these tasks, and what we're gonna do next, and things like that. Basically what you're doing, that the at the bottom line is you're managing the optics around this whole project delivery, right? Optics really matter. Optics in terms of how stakeholders look at you, how stakeholders perceive, whether this group of project team members can deliver what they are supposed to deliver or not. So that's something that I really want to highlight at the forefront, because without stakeholders, they can make or break your project. Without them, without their help, without their support. Yep. So second, it's about team members. So if you remember, we had to recruit quite a large group of people. So time and time again, what tells me is that finding the right people is hard, but out of those, the right people who can do the right job, what I tend to actually prefer is those group of team players with the conscience, right? So conscience in the sense that, as you have highlighted in the team charter, people who are not afraid to speak up, people who are not afraid to stand up for what they believe in, and people who would not be afraid to do the right thing, even if their bosses tell them otherwise. Yeah. So mindset always wins over the skill set, because you can train people up, you can coach them, they can learn new skills, but the mindset is something that's gonna, take you through the most difficult times. So I think that's one of the sharings that I want to provide to the rest of the audience as well. Conscience versus a competence. Um, and the third thing is something that I believe that we could have done a lot better, because most of the time when when a lot of tasks are coming to all your team members and even to yourself, what we tend to forget, or rather I forgot to actually put that in place, is actually planning cadence itself. Because planning is not like you do it at the beginning of the project, you go to the stakeholders, get their endorsement, and then you forget about it for the next 6 months or so. It just doesn't work like that. And being in a agile project delivery, lots of things change, team members change, stakeholders expectations definitely change, big or small. Those changes are by having this iterative planning, right? Be it monthly planning or be it every 3 months planning. In retrospect, I think we could have avoided a lot of our, last minute hiccups, I believe. So that's important. And also remember to communicate those changes, right? It's not like, okay, we're doing, planning, but if you don't communicate, people will know, okay, it has this changed. I didn't know that. When did this change? Right? So yeah. Four, four is about technology stack, right? So one of the stakeholders um, in the project that I've delivered is the solution provider, right? So I've always believed in this, which is, the less dependent you are on your solution provider, you know, the, the more confidence you can give to your team members, in the sense that, hey, not only your solution provider knows how to implement or how to implement certain solutions, but you yourself can learn it, you yourself can improve it, experiment it, and the team members would come together and, hey, okay, this is something that we can do it ourselves. We don't really need to rely on solution providers all the time. So that's a bit of a mindset change to some of the team members who joined the team in the early days, because some of the team members who come in have the understanding that, hey, if you have a vendor, why don't you get the vendor do everything for you, right? So, but in agile project delivery, it just doesn't work. You have to own the technology stack, you have to master it, you have to own the problem yourself, solve the problem yourself, and only when you need an additional help, you keep the solution providers at arm's length, so that you can always reach out to them, but you always own the problems and solve the problems yourself. I, and in my mind and in my experience, that's the best way to go. And that's no other way to go through this. I think you would like this one. NFRs, anti-fast, and NFRs. So this is actually a lessons learned. It wasn't really a challenge. Lessons learned because we didn't really identify, a whole bunch of NSRs in the early sprints, right? We didn't do, performance testing in the early days. We didn't include, performance testing or load testing or soak testing as part of the CI/CD process. So I think this is a lesson learned for us, for those of you, who are going through a similar software delivery agile project. You know, it is something that we always forget to do, right? And it is always something that always haunt you guys at the end of the project. Hey, have you done this? And then people show up and start doing, NFRs, be it the security testing, performance testing, or reliability and resilience testing, right? So I guess, if you put that as part of your sprint, as part of your iterative planning, it would definitely go a long way, because you can do an incremental testing and you can build up your learnings from the earlier sprints of the NFR testing. And that can definitely avoid the last minute, having to go through sets and sets of performance testing. Yeah. So this is definitely a lesson learned for me. And I hope, many of you would be able to take that up early in the project. Six, six is hard. The reason why six is hard is that when when we have to recruit a large number of people, you don't really know who they are, and you don't really know what their strengths and weaknesses are. So in retrospect, what I think we did very well is that I think we created a team charter very well. And I think we have, made the team understand that it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about how all of us actually work together, understand each other, and solve the problem together. I think we did really well in the team charter. And one more thing that I think is important is the team dynamics, right? I'm a big fan of team dynamics. The reason why it is big is that when you know your team players better, you can you can better assign tasks to them. You can better assemble teams. You can better assemble the teams. For example, you don't want to, have team members who are very good single-handedly, who are not communicators. In that case, you will probably want to assign very different tasks to these guys. And you want to group team members who are, who can communicate, who can actually work together with other team members in a different context as well. So I think, understanding your team members' strength and weakness and putting them through an opportunity for growth. For example, it's not about, oh, they join us and then they will be given tasks. But if they are given also an opportunity, hey, after you have done this, why don't you go and, why don't you go for a different challenge, a much more difficult challenge? So that will actually keep the team members interested and passionate about solving problems. So seven, I think you would agree, and also the viewers would agree, is, I mean, if you cannot see, how your project is going, right? If you cannot measure, where you are and how far you have been and how far you need to go, it's going to be a disaster, right? It's a time bomb, right? It's just gonna be downhill very soon. So, and I think this is something that I think we did fairly well. I like to say fairly well, but not completely, to the most part. The ability to see, which resources have taken up how many story points, what are their velocities. It's not perfect, right? It's not perfect, but at least you can challenge your team members. Hey, hang on a minute. Your team members have been able to do this. What's going on? Is it something that, I can help you with? So that actually puts them on their toes as well, right? And it's like, okay, I got to deliver. Right? Otherwise, somebody's going to notice, right? So this visibility is extremely important. And the last 2 points I think we could have done maybe a little bit better is having visibility on our backend services and also the mobile. So I think those are the areas that we cannot forget, right? So without this visibility, even in test environment, you're blind, right? You don't know what happened, right? If something goes wrong in the backend, you didn't know why it happened, when it happened. And also in the front end, in the mobile apps, when mobile apps have issues, if we don't have that visibility, it's very difficult for us to learn and improve from the gaps or the improvements that we need to make. So 8, I think 8 is something that all the team members in the team believed in since day one, and I think we did really, really well. Unlike many other projects that I have delivered, I've done many projects in the past, but more on the waterfall style, a fixed scope of work. Vendors come in, we put together a project team members and then deliver something after 9 months or 1 year. But this agile delivery is very different. We actually force our solution provider to do a demo every sprint. We also force our team members to do a daily demo. We also force ourselves and tell ourselves that, hey, let's go live every month, right? Let's release something every month, right? Because we believe that until and unless we can go live every month, we're not really learning anything. We're not really proving that whether what we've been doing in the earlier sprints actually work or not. Right? So we did manage to deliver a lot of missing user stories. We were able to detect customer experience, UI UX design gaps. We were able to get very early feedbacks for improvement. We were able to refactor some of the missing defects that we didn't detect in the production data and the environment itself. So I'm really proud of the team who actually agreed with us and who decided to work through monthly releases, which is not easy. As you know, every month you have to go through, CAP, DAP, change approval, design approval, right? But we made it through, and I'm really proud of the team. And I think the team itself is very proud of themselves as well, because if you remember, we told them that, in the early days, your days towards the finishing line of the project is going to be very tough. So they are mentally prepared for it, and they pressed on. And some of the team members really pressed on, and I'm really proud of them. So innovation sprint, right? So what is innovation sprint? It is something that all the, not only tech team members, but also POs and business analysts could do is, after every 3 months, for example, we could have an innovation sprint, right? Part of the reason it's easier said than done, actually, because when you are rushing for time, how do you find time to have an innovation sprint is very, very challenging. And we didn't actually have the luxury of having the innovation sprints. But for those of you who are planning for an agile project delivery, what I'd like to say is have a platform engineering squad who would be able to help you in the innovation sprint to solve some of the most difficult engineering problems, how you can do better in your microservice deployment, how can you make your deployments more resilient, right? And this set of team members and having this innovation sprint, you're not going to see the results immediately, of course, but down the track, after 6 months, 9 months, your team architectural runway, the foundation and the backbone of your technology stack will be a lot more resilient rather than rushing through the timelines, going through monthly releases, living with the defects, going through some of the last minute things. Again, it is not easy, right? It is something that many practitioners actually advocate, but it's hard to practice in my mind. And it's something in retrospective that as one of the lessons learned, maybe in the next project, we can actually definitely include this innovation sprint. So number 10, so this 10 is from you actually. So, and I think the whole project team learned this from you, the power of focus, right? Because before the start of the project, we were all over the place, if you remember, right? So because different stakeholders tell us very different things, we have many things for us to accomplish in 3 months. But at the end of the day, I mean, what we all agreed and what we all learned together is that we need to prioritize, right? There's no other way, right? And you cannot do only one thing. You have to do all the things that you are expected from your stakeholders for you to accomplish. And the only way to go through this is to come together, brainstorm, prioritize, and prioritize, and prioritize, and check off the tasks that you have completed. To some team members, they do it regularly. For me, I do it on a daily basis. On a day, I go through my reminders and I check them off go through the task one by one, and that really goes a long way. And thanks to you, you have a really good Trello board, and I remember a lot of us actually follow through your Trello board to prioritize and focus. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Those are a set of lessons learned and also the challenges that I like to share with the viewers today. You have anything to add? Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thanks for sharing. So, I mean, sounds very simple, right? But what we gone through to learn these 10 lessons, right? 10 key lessons. I know that you are also very active on SAFe, a Scale Agile framework, and I know
Yeah.
you spent a lot of time, you got certified and all those educations and self-studies that you have gone through. Tell me more about it. How is that useful? It's even useful, right? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so before Save, our focus is a lot on, I mean, I'm from an engineering background, and it what I learned from Save is very much about communicating to the stakeholders at the enterprise level, because Save actually gives you a much broader perspective than technical delivery, which I believe is important, because many of us who are techies, we tend to very much focus on using the latest and the coolest technologies. But at the end of the day, if the stakeholders think that what I want is something very simple, right? So, and that actually gives me a much deeper understanding around value streams, much deeper understanding around scaling from one squad to scaling multiple squads at different levels. That actually put me in the right perspective, I guess, when I actually joined the bank, because when I joined this project rather, because the project was already having about 4 or 5 squads, and we were ready to scale to 10, 15, and almost 20 now. And by going through the learnings that I have from SAFe, it really helps me to steer through some of the cadences that we need. How do we put together the Scrum Masters together, and how we can scale? Actually, right now we don't really have release trained engineers, for example. Right now we don't really have iteration planning and innovation planning and PI planning yet. And we can actually, I mean, you don't have to call it SAFe, right? I mean, you can pick out some of the things that works for you and then run with it. We can experiment it. If things work out, we're good. If things don't work out, we can actually innovate and find ways what would actually work for our teams, right? So that's the learnings that I have from this project. It's not about SAFe or Scrum. It's about how can you find the best way of working for your teams and to the context, the business context that you are in, the stakeholders context that you're in.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. You mentioned about platform engineering a squad. What are your expectations from platform engineering squad? Like, what do you like these squads to deliver for you?
So in my experience, what tends to happen is that um, the devs, it's our HO problem, right? The developers don't know operations, operation people don't know dev, and now we have DevSecOps and DevSecOps folks not knowing applications, right? So my expectations is slightly higher in the sense that these guys need to know a bit of DevSecOps, needs to know CI/CD, needs to know the deployment process, needs to know applications also, right? Because if you can groom this group of engineers, they will find gaps between DevSecOps and the applications engineers, and they can really improve the way how we deploy things, how you make the applications more resilient, because these are the guys who have the software development experience and they can share their experience with the developers. Hey, folks, when you deploy or when you write certain microservices, you deploy in such a way that it is, you can run in multiple pods, it is scalable, and it is cluster safe, right? So some of these learnings can definitely come from platform engineering squad. I believe, I strongly believe that.
Hmm, quite interesting. Um, I know that you have been able to hire a few hundred engineers in a couple of months, right? What do you think about it? Like, what are the key things that you think worth to share?
Yeah, I think for the uh, I think one of the things that we made very clear was that solution architects must code, right? And I think that's one of the best decisions that we ever made. And also another thing is we put them to the test in the early days, right? Hey, you're an SA. I give you a bunch of developers. Show me something in 2 weeks. Here's a bunch of videos. Here's a bunch of repositories. Here's a bunch of documentations that we put together. Assemble your knowledge and get something done, right? And that really put them on the toes, get them motivated. Actually, some are like, okay, let's go for it, right? I can do better than this, right? So I'm really proud of some of our team members, solution architects, who actually step up. Not only the essay work that they have used to before, but also they have gone into deployment. They have gone into some of the territories of DevSecOps, which I really appreciate and which I find them commendable, extremely commendable and valuable PMT members. Yeah.
Well, so is yeah, we're almost getting over our time, and it's been nearly getting near to 2 years that me and you we have been working quite closely.
Yes.
And I've been fortunate enough to have you as a friend as well. I mean, I'm very grateful. You have been an amazing asset, and I learned a lot working with you. I wish I had your weakness, strengths, but I don't have actually. Your strengths are my weakness usually.
My
But
weakness
once
is
again, I want to say thank you for spending time on Sunday with me and us and sharing all this stuff that you just shared.
Thank
Very
you. Thank
interesting. Maybe we should do another session, get
you.
a few more folks after go live, probably
Sure,
in next
sure.
week, like 10,
We should
11
do
of
that.
us onto.
Definitely, definitely. I remember, we put together this requirements modeling. At first we were like thinking, oh, hang on a minute, do we really need to do that? But it turns out it really helped the whole project. Right? Everybody was like following it. Not only our project, all the other projects was like, hey, this is the de facto, this is the standard, this is the way of doing things, right? And we have Jira set up following that structure, and there's no confusion there, right? Once you have that in place, everybody understands it, appreciates it, and that's something that I always feel proud of. And thank you for that as well, giving us the showing us the way and showing us the right direction for us to proceed.
All right, it was fun.
That was pretty, yeah, that was fun.
We have a couple of more exciting weeks to go before we publicly launch our retail banking and business banking. Looking
Yeah.
forward to have a session with like all of our
Yes,
crew. Maybe we set up a WebEx for like 20 of us. I don't know what will
we
happen,
should.
but it will be really fun
Last
to
few hurdles,
share.
then we're good. Absolutely. Last
Yeah.
few
All right,
hurdles,
buddy.
we're good. Yeah.
Thank you again. Thanks so much. I
Okay.
appreciate the call and spending time with us on Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Take
Yeah.
care.
Have a good day.
You too.